So we're going to look at the comparison between Qi35 and Qi10 in the core models of the fairway woods. So TaylorMade, known for long hitting fairway woods, so is this long? But Qi10 was also very good, so can it beat Qi10 for all-round performance? So in the same way we did a comparison in a previous video with the Qi10 core model driver and Qi35 core model driver, we're now going to do the same with the 3 woods. So we're going to start with the Qi10, hit 5 or 6 shots with this, hit 5 or 6 with the Qi35, and then look at the data so you can see what can you expect to see that's different from the new model to the Qi10. So let's start off with this one. So literally going to be off the ground, half a dozen shots, see what kind of data differences we get. Now, it's fair to say that Qi10 fairway was a very good head. It's not like actually that the driver, there were characteristics that we knew we struggled with from a fitting point of view. The fairway was actually a very strong performer. So if it changes much, then there is a danger that they've over-changed it if we get too different a data. So it'd be very interesting to see how each model compares. So obviously this one's a fixed hosel. And by that, I mean it's a glued sleeve, whereas on the Qi35 it's adjustable. That in its own right gives us more versatility from a fitting point of view. So I'm going to do similar things we did, so driver tests we did across the face performance. And I'm going to do a similar thing with this. I'm going to catch one a little bit thin. So a little bit lower on the face, just pick that one a little bit more. And then we'll get one a little bit out the heel and toe as well. I think it's important to do this because it's all well and good saying, oh, out the middle of the face it goes miles. They all do. So actually, we're all golfers, we all miss hit shots. So learning what out the heel and the toe each head does actually gives us a bit of a more realistic impact of how it performs on course for everyone, rather than just the robot testing. Let's get this one a little toe. Right, so definitely feels a lot more stable out the toe than the heel. That one was marginally toe side and the other one was quite heely, but actually so much more solid from a toe strike point of view than out the heel. Heel is the weakest part of any club, so you're always going to see the biggest effect on performance from that part of the face. But that's us hitting across the Qi10. Switch it over to the Qi35 and get the comparison. So if you're enjoying this comparison content, check out the driver one. We did Qi10 versus Qi35 core model. Check that out as well. So unlike with the driver, where I could switch my own shaft into both heads, Qi10's glued, this one has the adapter, so I could put my shaft in this head, but I can't glue it into the Qi10. So we're using the matching shaft. This is the same weight and the same series, just a different matte finish versus a gloss finish to the previous sort of Ventus TR stock version of the shaft that was in the Qi10. So keeping it as similar as possible. So obviously a very, very different visual with the lighter crown, the carbon composite crown. Just a very different, actually the alignment looks a little bit cleaner from my eye. Now, as I said, the Qi10 was already a very good performer, so very interested to see where that performance change is. Now, obviously there's more versatility from the hosel, that adapter being able to dial the loft up and down and open the face and close the face. That's an area of versatility from a setup point of view that will make quite a big difference to dialing the club in for the individual player. But see, today we're focusing on a cross-face performance in the same standard setting to mimic the glued position on the other head. So let's get one other solid hit. So they're both pretty good. So we'll start to work across the face in terms of strike points. So as I did with Qi10, I'll go low, and I'll go heel, and I'll go toe, and then we'll compare the data. Be quite interesting to see where the numbers match up visually. I mean, slight pull. Visually, the launch is a little bit lower on this head, just for where it's hitting the screen. So when we tap into the numbers at the end of the hitting, we'll see whether that's showing up in the data as well. That was a rank fat, so I might not use that one. I don't think we could blame the club face for that. I'm going to try and get this one a little bit more out the heel. Okay. Yeah, that's low heel. So, right, let's get one a bit toey. It might seem a bit of an odd thing to be trying to mishit these, but say middle of the face, we kind of know what we're going to get. It's the off-center side of things that allegedly the difference is going to be that's where we should see the biggest difference, and allegedly that's where the improvements have been made. So unless we're testing off-center, we don't really get a fair representation of the technological advances. So obviously out the middle is great, but very few players hit it out the middle every shot. So. Yeah, maybe I'm catching those. That was maybe a little bit lower on the face. But certainly quite a strong flight. I'm going to do one more centered contact just because I feel like I just want to make sure I'm getting this high enough up the face. There's definitely a slightly different delivery required, I think, for this. As much as the CG's changed, and in principle with the lighter crown it's gone lower, for some players, they're going to find that Qi10 picks the ball up a little bit more, and this may be a function of where that spin and launch profile is. But I feel like I've got to get this into the bottom of the ball just a little bit more. And then up the flight goes. So certainly on hitting this, and I'm, in some respects, you could argue learning the product as much as you guys are trying to learn about the product. The more we hit it, the more we find out about these heads. So certainly finding lower on the face, whilst it appears to be still quite a strong spin, we'll look at the data shortly, it's definitely a bit of a stronger launch. So I feel like I've got to get the bottom of the club into the bottom of the ball slightly more than I did with the Qi10. So something I think we'll see showing up in the numbers. So looking at the summary of that data, and it's across all the shots of centre strike and off centre, there are some subtle differences. Ball speed off the face, the efficiency across the face, those two, the smash number is the same. Although what we can see is the consistency, that tolerance is a little bit tighter. So there's a little less up and down. Shown up in the ball speeds, tolerance of 2.5 miles an hour versus 3.3. So whilst there's not a lot of difference in the average, the top and bottom, the peaks and troughs are a little bit less out of the Qi35, which in principle you'd expect if they've been working on consistency and optimizing weight positioning within the head, it should lead to a little bit more consistency of ball speed. The bit that does show out, less so in the actual launch angle, it's 0.6 of a degree, so it is there. There is a change in launch angle being a little bit lower. The spin is lower off the Qi35. Now, this is, for me, across this batch of shots, but I'd expect to see that show up for the vast majority of players because it's not a small difference in spin. This is quite a significant change. It's 17–18%. It's 600 revs of spin, which is quite significant. So Qi35 is a powerful head, and I think the fact that it's got that sleeve, that adapter to change the loft, I think that's really important because I think we're going to be dialing loft up for a lot of players. Now, that additional loft will help get launch angle, but the head's then knocking the spin down on this is what I've seen in this session, but also in a couple of the fittings I've done with this head already, is it's a very strong head for spin. This head being lofted up to close the face a bit, or using the 3HL, the forward essentially, the higher loft. I think we're going to do a lot of those heads this year. And spin consistency across that batch of shots, for me, slightly better on the Qi10. I'll come back to that very shortly. But again, delivery, very consistent. It's not like angle of attack changed particularly. Shallowed out a little bit with the Qi35. That might be me reacting to the ball coming out lower and almost trying to help it in the air a little bit, potentially. But distance-wise, Qi35 slightly longer. It's a hair more ball speed. I had a slightly quicker club speed, so if we normalise that, we take a couple of yards off. But the lower spin is giving a significant amount of extra run out. So if we normalise the ball speed and take a mile an hour off, we take a few yards off, but it's still 7 or 8 yards longer when it hits the deck. So that's a noticeable change to Qi35. Going back to the contact point side of things, where I mentioned when I was hitting shots that I felt like I had to catch the ball higher up the face. The heat map here, this is the Qi10, so the strikes are kind of lower, what appear to be lower mid. If I go to the 35, it is higher up. Now, that would make sense where anything I caught slightly lower half felt a little bit less clean, felt slightly thin. Now, it didn't negatively affect the spin rate too much. I'll go back to the data to look at that, but what that does show is you've got to get this very slightly, in principle, slightly higher up the face to get that really optimal performance. So it may not change the angle of attack much, but this head performs, the 35 performs really well when you catch it just that bit higher up the head than Qi10. So going into the data for each of the shots, what we can see, launch angle wise, really pretty consistent at the Qi10, very, very repeating, with one a little bit higher after I've done the variations of strike. So strike point really didn't change spin rate very much at all. Didn't really change loft or launch angle, sorry, that much. The thin shot didn't flare it up or down. Maybe again that CG position for me suited me slightly more. And even the heel strike, we dropped ball speed out of those heel and toe strikes, but we didn't really affect distance that much or flight. Moving into the 35, this is where you can see more of an up and down in terms of launch angle. The clean hits got slightly better launch than the Qi10, but then the spin is pretty low. Now that would be my only comment on this head, is if you're not someone who gets a lot of flight, unless you loft up, this head could have that bit of a knuckle shot out of it. So if you have a propensity to hit the toe side or to have that bit of a lower spin flight, you may want to look elsewhere for a head. This is a really strong flighted head based on initial testing and this bit of testing here. To get a mid twos, low twos spin for a bit of a draw, that's where either go up in loft or look at a slightly different head, because if you spin it a lot, great, but if you're a low spinner, this could be a bit of a knuckleball. But launch angle affected a bit more by a heel and a low strike. That was the one I chunked that I've got out there, which isn't going to do anyone any good to compare with. So a little bit more variation in launch angle. Spin's still pretty consistent, but with the dip, the low spin, when you get that higher strike point, it goes hot, but the spin really drops. So overall, as a bit of a summary, Qi10 was a very good head. Qi35 has more versatility from the weight in the bottom to dial up and down swing weight, but also that adjustable hosel allows you to turn face angle in, add loft, close the face, take loft off, open the face, so you could take the 3HL down to a 3 wood, and it might retain a little bit more spin. So it gives you those options which Qi10 didn't. Both are very good for ball speed, but if you're looking for a lower spin, bit of a bomber, then Qi35, really very good. So thanks for watching the video. If you've liked it, please do subscribe, hit the bell button, do all the niceties that go along with YouTube. If there are any other comparisons that you'd like to see us do, also please do let us know. Put something in the comments, let us know what you'd like to see us do, and we've got all the heads here so we can test out pretty much whatever you'd like. So thanks for watching, we'll see you again soon.